All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to fix your hamstrings with trigger point therapy and stretching. And at the end, I'll talk about how to bulletproof your hamstrings, and that'll help with overall mobility as you age and also just to have healthy hamstrings for your life. I'm currently building out a library of content for trigger point therapy, stretching, how to use Theracanes, and how to bulletproof your body for the long term. If you want access to me beyond all of the free content, you can check out my website or the link in the description where you can get access to me. All right, I don't like long intros, so let's get to it. All right, so the concept of corrective exercise always begins with inhibition, and that basically means to put pressure on the muscle. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to take this lacrosse ball, and I'm on a ledge right here where my feet can dangle, and I'm just going to place it underneath the hamstring and apply pressure down into my leg. You don't actually have to add extra pressure. You can if you want to, but you can just let your leg dangle, and then the pressure of gravity will be enough most of the time anyways. And this is a good opportunity to say that there are three main hamstring muscles. And one of them is the biceps femoris, which technically has two sections to it, but we kind of just call it one muscle. But anyways, you're going to just search around, move the ball up and down a little bit. You can move your leg side to side to try and find different trigger points. And I can feel the pressure already in this area. And the play here is just to move along the muscle up and down while kind of going side to side. So I start at the bottom typically, and I'll kind of roll side to side. And you're just kind of taking note of what hurts, where you feel the pressure the most. And as you do it, you can pause on places. You can rest your hand down to add extra pressure, or you can just lay off and just let the pressure relax the muscle. So the whole time you're just breathing in and out of it. And then once I've explored the entire leg, basically, because you're going to go up one side of the leg and then you're going to have to go over to the other two muscles and go up and down those as well. So it's basically like you're doing two passes on it, up and down. You can go as high as you want. Basically, it gets harder as you get to the top because then you're kind of on top of the femur more, so that's a little bit more difficult. What you want to do is when you find a good spot or a spot that's extra sensitive, you don't want the pain to exceed a 6 or 7 out of 10, but you want to let yourself rest there and breathe for about 30 seconds, and then you can move on to a different spot. One more thing that you can do to supercharge this is to add an active release technique. So you'll pin the muscle where you're sensitive, and then I'll hold my leg in place, and then I will extend the leg out. I'm engaging the quad muscles to extend at the knee, and that's going to put the hamstring in a stretched position while being pinned. So that's a really effective way to help loosen up the muscle while trigger pointing it. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds with stretching and trigger point. But after you've inhibited the muscle, the next thing to do is lengthen. One of the basic ways to stretch your hamstring is to just put it up on a ledge that's probably below hip height. And you want to make sure that your bottom foot is facing forward. You don't want to be turning your hip out to the side. You want to be square to the place that you're facing. And you can do one of two things. You can keep your foot kind of relaxed, or you can kind of pull your toes towards you, which will put more tension through your posterior chain. I tend to feel this in my calf a bunch too. And then all you're going to do is lean forward at the hips. Now, I'm not sure if you can see my full body, but a lot of people, when they lean forward, will bend their back, but that's not going to actually increase the stretch through your hamstrings. That's only bending at the back. So you keep your back flat or at least neutral, and you just extend at the hips. The hips are what rotate and actually put pressure onto the hamstrings, and that's what you're trying to do. First, we inhibited with the trigger point therapy, and now we're stretching and lengthening through the hamstrings with the options of extending the feet forward, pulling the feet towards us, or having a slight bend in the knee to shift where the stretch is on your hamstring. Another way that you can target the hamstrings is just to do like a half split. This is going to basically do the same thing that we just did on the ledge, but you won't have to worry about the balance as much. And you can do all the same things. You can add bend to the knee a little bit to change the location. You can pull the toes towards you, same thing. But as you gain more mobility and flexibility through your hips and your hamstrings, you'll be able to slowly get yourself more towards a split. The issue that people find with doing splits is that they cheat by rolling their hips out and opening up the hips, but really, just like the other versions of this, you want to keep your hips as square as possible. And you can also manipulate the same variables where you add knee bend, your toes, anything like that, and the ankles and knee will change the stretch slightly through the hamstrings. The point of this is not to get an ego stretch. Just getting as deep as possible is not necessarily the goal. You want to feel the stretch in the desired location. So if the hamstring is what you're trying to target, then you need to make sure that you're putting some mind-body connection towards getting the hamstring stretched. And that might look like this some days. Other days you might be able to get a little bit lower. Other days you won't be able to get as low. That's okay. A secondary hamstring stretch that sometimes helps me is actually the deep lunge. Now, this is typically more of a hip opener, but what you can do is extend the ankle out a little bit more, and you'll probably feel it more in your hamstring. It's not as direct or targeted, and you have to have mobility in the hips to be able to do it a little bit more, but it's still an option if you want to try it. All right, so those are the main hamstring stretches to go along with the trigger point therapy that we talked about already. The last thing I want to talk about is how to bulletproof your hamstrings with just one simple strength exercise. And it's simple in nature, but it's actually very difficult to do perfectly, nearly impossible. Now, I know you can't see me right now, but it's the lower body that matters most here. And basically, the exercise is to go into a pretty wide stance lunge and lower yourself down and back up. Over time, you'll slowly add more and more distance between your legs, and this is putting your hamstrings in a very extended position. Eventually, you'll be able to get down to like a split, essentially, but you're engaging your hamstrings, which is going to basically add range of motion. And that's the whole idea. This is a very progressive thing. I don't recommend starting very far. I recommend probably starting with just a slightly extended lunge that you sink into, and you work on sinking more in a controlled manner as much as possible. And over time, you can add space to it. There's a ton of other hamstring exercises like the Nordic curl or doing a normal hamstring curl with like a big exercise ball or something like this where your heels are on it and you're pulling your hamstrings in. Those are all great exercises, as well as single leg RDLs and normal Romanian deadlifts with a barbell or even just any weight that you have or weightless. But the one that I just went over with the lengthening and the very extended lunge position is the one that will put your hamstring in the most vulnerable position, which means the most lengthened, and it's going to force the adaptation for the ultimate range of motion that you might want. And that'll make you stronger, it'll make you faster, it'll give you better knee health and hip health because the hamstrings cross both joints. So they're important in a whole bunch of lower body movement, and that's why I wanted to go over that today. If you have any questions, let me know in the description below. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.